This is kind of a breaking story over the last few days. You have got Candace Owens' video yesterday. I want to say got like 7 million views or something like that in just over a day, which is just absolutely insane. And one of the things that she's talking about is that there is some sort of a battle going on, it appears, after Charlie Kirk's death for basically the framing of his ideological position before he died. So on one hand, you've got the Zionists and the Israelis and even Benjamin Netanyahu coming out after his death, going on Fox News and basically saying that Charlie Kirk, yeah, he was one of us. He died for Israel, and Charlie Kirk did spend much of his career defending Israel. And then on the other hand, you've got a bunch of people who have come out and said actually Charlie was having a major change of heart, and that his position on Israel and also potentially on his Protestant faith as well was seriously changing. And one of the events that everybody's talking about is this event in the Hamptons that went down, where Bill Ackman, who is a Jewish billionaire, hosted a few people at a property of his, I think, in the Hamptons. I think that there was some sort of like influences there, but Max Blumenthal details this here in his little theory of what's
Now,
going on.
let's give some additional context too for the viewer. So earlier in the week, well, I guess this was I can't remember the day. I'll have to pull up the tweet, but I had put out a tweet saying there's going to be a major power vacuum and power struggle which comes out of Charlie Kirk's death. Of course, you guys aren't stupid. You knew that that was going to happen. So there's two different ways that you can contextualize this. The first way is that a lot of people who were friends with Charlie Kirk just want to get the information out there that he wasn't quite as friendly to Israel as people seem to think. Or the second way that you can contextualize this is that this massive power vacuum is now there, and many people want to absorb this huge infrastructure and audience, but they have to somehow make Kirk's message compatible with their own. So how do you do that? Well, I could think one good way to do that, especially if you have a very anti-Israel message, is to kind of poignantly say, no, actually, Kirk wasn't really very pro-Israel. So we don't actually know which thing is happening right now, or if either thing is happening and something else is afoot. We have no idea. But that does seem to be what's going on currently, is that the first strikes of the right-wing infighting are over whether or not Kirk himself was even pro or anti-Israel. And I think that has a lot to do with the current power vacuum, which has opened up, that people are trying to fill.
Yeah, I think a power vacuum, but also potentially an audience vacuum as well, because I don't know. I don't know how many people would have been just so exclusively like Charlie Kirk's audience. Maybe there was this younger generation coming through. I know that like Nick Fuentes, for example, has a lot of the younger generation who comes through, and they're listening to his message, and they're very much devoted to what he says. I'm not sure if Charlie Kirk has the same cult like devotion of people to his message, but it does appear as though there are people trying to pounce and really sort of bring those who are undecided about these matters over to their side.
It does. Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's Occam's razor, right? So, is there a large political motivation right now for a large, a large amount of the close confidants of Charlie Kirk, who could move into the TPUSA infrastructure, become the new spokesman, and start taking it over, to begin to kind of say, no, actually, Charlie's message was my message. You just don't know. We have the secret insider info saying that it was, though. There does seem to be powerful motivation for that, doesn't there?
I mean, for sure, because you look at TPUSA, and it is the organization that has the most sway and influence over the youth. So I think when we're talking about a power vacuum, that is where it is in terms of just raw power and actually steering the ship of TPUSA and their messaging going forward. And then you've got people who are going to recognize that there might be people who've maybe a bunch of people who feel disenfranchised by Charlie Kirk's death, and they don't know where to look now. They maybe won't stay with, because Charlie Kirk was really making a huge impact in the TikTok algorithm. And I think that it's really hard to underestimate how significant that was, because he was kind of the first right-wing figure to really infiltrate that algorithm. I don't really know anybody else who's done that.
Fuentes did it, but he
But
gets banned
after
constantly. Yeah,
after
after.
though,
Yes,
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But the thing is actually, I think there's a lot of right wingers now who do trend quite a bit on TikTok. But I agree with you that it was the organizational outreach of TPUSA to the colleges, which really assisted with the TikToks going viral, oftentimes from other large creators who are on that platform reposting them. So I think, but I'm not going to discount the power vacuum here, right? There's a lot of motivation that a lot of people have right now to sweep into TPUSA and try to pick up as much of that kind of audience, infrastructure, and resources as they possibly can. And so I have to contextualize everything in the coming weeks through that prism because it's a very powerful motivator.
Mm. All right, let's have a listen to this.
Following my September 12th report, which provided background about the pressure, the mounting pressure that Charlie Kirk was under from pro-Israel forces, from Netanyahu's cutouts in the United States, I gathered more details. The piece, it hit like a sledgehammer. It really caused a lot of, I think it spoke for a lot of people, particularly within the conservative movement, which is changing uh, among the youth on the question of Israel. And more people started coming out, and more people started talking, and people were talking to me. And these were people who had knowledge of a tumultuous, stormy meeting held in the Hamptons during the first week of August, convened, according to multiple sources, with knowledge of this meeting, intimate knowledge of this meeting, by the billionaire ultra-Zionist financier Bill Ackman, who's close to Netanyahu and his kind of network in the United States. Charlie Kirk was summoned along with an array of young, sort of vapid, very avaricious conservative influencers who seem to be sort of in Israel's back pocket to set a very pro-Israel tone for this meeting. And Charlie Kirk was, according to one source, hammered by Ackman and others for allowing Israel critics, very prominent conservative voices like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, or the anti-Zionist Jewish comedian Dave Smith to appear at his events. And actually, Charlie Kirk was planning to host many of these same figures again in December, and he had just added to his TPUSA major, I think it's called America Fest in December, the premier critic of Israel in Congress. I didn't say Republican critic, I just said premier critic because that's what she is now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, which really reflected his shifting views. And Ackman, according to multiple sources, had this meeting to basically bully Charlie Kirk into submission. Charlie Kirk walked away, according to one person, feeling like there was an attempt to blackmail him. He refused any offers of funding and also refused the offer to travel to Israel and meet with Netanyahu, which Netanyahu disclosed in the wake, the immediate wake of Netanyahu's death. He talked about this letter.
He means
He
Charlie
didn't
Kirk's
say
death.
whether Charlie Kirk refused or accepted. I've learned since that he refused.
All right, so there's the context. They had this meeting. Apparently, they were sort of, according to Max Blumenthal or his source, they were sort of berating Charlie Kirk about his position on Israel. And I mean, I've been documenting this for probably about a year now on my channel in terms of Charlie Kirk's evolving stance on Israel. And he does give the sort of milk toast take, or he did give the milk toast sort of takes whenever people would come up and they would ask him, he'd be like, well, you know, the Bible says to bless the Jews and these sorts of things. But then Turning Point itself was definitely having a change of heart of sorts. Having Dave Smith on that debate, they did that focus group where they were talking about whether or not Israeli influence in American politics is good, whether or not they're the greatest ally. He had, he apparently booking Marjorie Taylor Greene for the next AmFest. It did seem as though there was a change of heart going on there. And I've even heard over the past few days, various people who are close to Charlie saying that he was looking into Catholicism and Orthodoxy, or he was at least interested.
I'm very skeptical as to the. I'm very skeptical that TPUSA is going to do a turnabout on its kind of mass support for Israel. It's one of the mainstays of TPUSA that Israel is a staunch ally of the United States and deserves the unconditional support of the United States. Thus far, I haven't seen great evidence for this. I've seen a lot of people saying that it's the case, but not any smoking guns. So right now we got hearsay, but maybe as you go along, there'll be more evidence here presented.
Yeah, so I think that
just a thank you to Redacted for the raid.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
for the
Redacted.
raid. Appreciate it.
All right, so this was filmed on the 6th of August after the Hamptons conference, which was on the 4th and the 5th. So Bill Ackman, in his statement on X, he came out and he responded to Candace Owens, who had basically lobbed these accusations at him as well. And he comes out and says, you know, we had Charlie on the 4th and the 5th. This interview with Megyn Kelly was on the 6th, and you can see Charlie Kirk's tone here.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and I would second that. Megyn, I think I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel, both on campus, on social media, to great, you know, let's just say mockery and scorn at times, because I believe it, right? I believe in the scriptural land rights given to Israel. I believe in fulfillment of prophecy. And again, I'm not a theologian, but I'm a Christian. My life was changed in Israel. The spiritual energy is so amazing there. I want them to win. I've said that repeatedly.
Same.
And however, Megyn, you're hitting on something very potent and important. Now, let me first say, I don't want to judge an entire group because there's been many people in the pro-Israel world that have been very sweet, very kind, very nuanced, very Charlie, you know, you're with us. You don't have to agree all the time. However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megyn, calling me an anti-Semite. I am learning biblical Hebrew and writing a book on the Shabbat. I honor the Shabbat, literally the Jewish Sabbath. I visit Israel and fight for it. And there's another article out in the Times of Israel today. I could read it on air. I was just reading before I got on. Charlie, what are you doing? Like, what am I doing? I'm sorry. Like, let's just take a step back here. Like, I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But like some of the mess, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megyn, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating. It's been so unfair. They were coming after you after a turning point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
Though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megyn. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, I mean, you saw it, Megyn. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say the people that are attacking me are in a hyper paranoid state.
What does that say to you? What kind of mood is he in about this whole thing?
I mean, look, in this context, it does sound an awful lot like he's pissed off at a group of actors who he's dealing with, right? But he reaffirms that he's staunchly a supporter of Israel and wants them to win. So what the victory conditions are, I think Kirk has been very clear on. He wants them to conquer Hamas. He wants the Arab nations to leave them alone, and he believes in the fulfillment of prophecy, meaning that he believes in the more dispensationalist message that by supporting Israel, we're doing the will and obedience of Jesus Christ. Right? I understand all of that. Those were some of the criticisms that myself and many other conservatives had for him. However, there's some nuance here. Kirk appeared to be doing outreach to guys like Dave Smith and very, very anti-Zionist right-wingers and actually listening to them, trying to do the same thing that he was doing when it came to the various college campuses through the TPUSA outreach program, which is, can we find common ground for compromise here, at least on the core social issues, so that we can move those issues forward. Now, by the way, that's a really demanding political strategy, but it is often a political strategy which works, right? I don't think you're going to have a hard time getting guys like Dave Smith on board for a pro Second Amendment message, an anti-abortion message, anti-gay marriage message. You're not going to have trouble getting those guys on board. The points of contention are going to be over the foreign policy, especially with Israel. But from Kirk's perspective, it's very wise for him to have those roundtables because from his view, he can both refute the arguments and develop that coalition for the central core issues that he's trying to kind of attack, right? So this is mainstream politics kind of at its best. And Kirk was definitely a political player. And that's the context I take this in. Now, could this be that he's frustrated this group of people who he's frustrated with inside or representing Israeli interests? Could it easily have been this billionaire? Sure, it could have been. I have no idea. But I do want to take a wait and see approach for more evidence before I make up my mind on it.
Yeah, I think that's wise. And you definitely can see it from that perspective in terms of him wanting to actually facilitate the message, because it did seem as though over the past year or two, especially since the war in Gaza has broken out, it did seem as though that conversation has become absolutely inevitable, and that we can't just, because I remember when I used to watch TP USA events when I first got into politics, and I used to just sort of watch the 5-minute PragerU videos and these things. I used to take it at face value that Israel is obviously the good guy and they're our greatest ally, and would be saying, he'd be at the Charlie Kirk would be at the events and he'd be saying, you know, we believe in that America is the greatest country ever made, and we believe in Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank and the Golan Heights. And I'd be like, yeah, like whatever that means, you know. So people, I think, used to just take it at face value, but then since this has been so magnified, the conversation has actually become inevitable, and it's actually converging from the left and the right. So eventually these organizations have to have the conversation, or else they just open themselves up to so much ridicule.
Speculation aside, because we don't know the answers yet. Neither one of us were players in any of these various systems with Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, and these guys. They have a different system, an enclosed system, right? So we don't really, like, we don't have the insider baseball on this to know one way or the other. So everybody's kind of speculating. But what is clear to me, and very, very clear to me, is that there's a major fight that is now erupting over what the legacy of Charlie Kirk is going to be. Was the legacy actually pro-Israeli or not pro-Israeli? And that seems to be the question, which is now going to be plaguing TPUSA and the other right-wingers, the dissident right-wingers who want to take over what TPUSA and the infrastructure is. That's more clear to me than ever from watching this.
Yeah, I just wonder, I mean, if you had to hazard a guess about, because TPUSA is going to need a new CEO and a new face of the organization, I'm wondering who the players might be, who the contenders might be.
As of right now, I think that they would probably put somebody up internally from the TPUSA organization itself. I don't think that like a Ben Shapiro, somebody who is, they may have worked with TPUSA, but were external to the organization. I don't think that that's going to be who they're going to try to be moving towards for a spokesman. I don't think there is any replacing Charlie Kirk as the face of that. He had kind of the pedigree for it, and he had been at this for many, many, many years, since his early 20s, building this organization up. Actually, before that even. So I don't think there is any easy way to replace him. But I think whoever they do put up is going to come internally. But I have no idea who that would be. No clue.
Yeah, I do think that they're going to have to get somebody who has a bit of charisma and who is maybe somewhat of a public figure already. Because if you get somebody out of the shadows, then I just don't think that it will even be able to shine Charlie Kirk's boots in that regard, if that makes sense. But if you got a guy like Seth Dillon, for example, from the Babylon Bee, somebody who is already somewhat of a public figure and who is in that world already, people kind of know who he is. That would be very controversial, obviously, because he is a big Zionist. But I do think that the way that Turning Point works in terms of their donors, I think somebody like that could be a real option. Somebody maybe from an external organization who's already had experience being a CEO of an organization and maybe wants to step up to a bigger organization.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's too early to even speculate if that conversation's even happening yet. I'm sure it is, but it's not. It's not privy to the public, that's for sure. And a lot of it's going to hinge on Erica Kirk's endorsement, right? It's going to really hinge on her endorsement. If she says no, this person is not, just ruining the legacy of my husband, TPUSA is finished immediately. So it's going to hinge a lot on what she ends up deciding.
Yeah.
Even if she had
All right.
no actual physical control of the company, if she just publicly ever stated this person is not representative of my husband's legacy, he would be finished, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think
So
that she is extremely influential, obviously, in this decision. Tucker Carlson reveals that Charlie Kirk told him many times in private that he did not like Benjamin Netanyahu. He says Kirk saw Netanyahu as a destructive force and was horrified by the children being killed in Gaza under his leadership.
He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening in Gaza. He was, above all, resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit of his country, and that it was shameful and embarrassing and bad for the United States, and he resented it. Didn't hate Netanyahu. He wasn't out there with a placard saying that, but he certainly expressed that to me and a lot of other people. And there's no question that Bibi's defenders on the internet will call me a liar or a kook, but that's a fact. And enough text messages exist that I think it can probably be verified in pretty short order. Not that it needs to be, because that is true. Shortly after that speech, there was a very intense attack on Charlie, and to some extent on me, not that I really noticed. But on him, I have no donors. He had $100 million worth of donors. And so, because he was involved in a different project from just yapping on the internet, which is what I do for a living, he was dependent to a great extent on his donors, of course. It's a nonprofit. And they went after him and tormented him. Not all, of course. Many were supportive. But the ones who were offended by my speech, and there was a small, very intense group who were, tormented Charlie Kirk until the day he died.
So strong words. I mean, once again, I think it's pretty much the same response, is that it's all sort of speculation, right?
Well, the thing is these are very prominent voices. Tucker Carlson's a very prominent voice on the right. And, his open vocal criticism of Israel has been, I mean, pretty overwhelming. Same thing with Candace Owens and others. All of them are kind of collectively saying here that behind the scenes, Kirk didn't really like this guy much. He didn't like Benjamin Netanyahu. However, that really doesn't have much to do with his pro-Israeli stance. I don't think that Kirk was the type who would say, we have to support whatever government is in Israel forever and ever and ever, but rather the nation which is theirs is part of God's plan. Probably something akin to that, right? But many people on the right, even moderate right-wingers, don't actually like Netanyahu. They think he's way too much of a war hawk, and that he has used the powers of his office to extend his stay when he really shouldn't have done that he would have ended up in jail if he wasn't extending a lot of these wars. And so they have a lot of resentment for him. It could easily be the case that Charlie Kirk did not like that guy much. It could be. But I want to see some, I just want to see some more evidence of that, other than just, I say so, you know what I mean? I heard it myself. Some good evidence, maybe some text messages, something like that would be useful.